So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar Multimodality Made Visible, Mobility Points in the Baltic Sea Region Cities. This is the fourth and last session in the Cities Multimodal webinar series. We have had 3 previous ones about living streets, citizen involvement, and mobility management. And all the recordings and presentations can be found on our website. So some technical information before we get going. We are recording this webinar and you will all get a link to the recording once we send the follow-up email to you in a couple of days. You are muted throughout the webinar, and if you don't hear anything or get some audio issues, just check your settings in the left corner. We encourage you to ask questions to our speakers during the webinar, and you can do so in the Q&A box. If you wish to comment or otherwise just say something, you can use the chat, but preferably questions in the Q&A and other stuff in chat. Yeah, but before we really get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sinla Mourou, and I work as a project coordinator at the UBC Sustainable Cities Commission. I would also like to introduce my colleague Esta Kreutz. She's also working as a project coordinator in the same unit and commission, and she is co-moderating the webinar today with me. Let's see. But now we will move on to a short poll. So Esther, please. So the first question is, whom do you represent? And the second, how did you find out about the webinar? Esther, do we have any results?
Yes, let's wait a couple of seconds still, that a few more can vote. Still increasing, 80% have voted. Okay, 5 more seconds and I will end the poll. So I will end the poll now and share the results with you. So we can see that the majority of you participating today are representing local authorities, well, as we expected, but it's also interesting to see who else is participating. So we have a few persons from regional authorities, an NGO and a consultancy. And then the second question is also just for us, also interesting to know, like, how did you find out the webinar? How did you find out about the webinar? To see what kind of communication channels really work for us to inform you about this kind of events. And here we see social media obviously is the is the winner. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So just a really short info about this project, Cities Multimodal. It's an Interreg Baltic Sea Region project. We started in 2017 and will end this month, so the last of March. Our consortium consists of 10 cities and 6 expert partners, and more information can be found on our website. But now to the speakers of today. First, we have Dr. Kristina Gauce from Vilnius. She will talk about the concept of mobility points and what they can do for multimodality. Then we will move on to Rostock and Lisa Wiechmann, who will introduce their mobility points. Then Ausra Siciuniene will present the City of Vilnius mobility point planning process. And Ausra will be joined by Birute Jautaite from the Vilnius Public Transport Company. Then we have the Riga mobility point presented by Nika Kotovica from the Riga Energy Agency. And finally, Michael Abraham from Berlin Technical University. He will present the lessons learned about the mobility points from an evaluation perspective. But now I'd like to welcome Kristina Gauce to kickstart this webinar.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Sini. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you for giving me opportunity to share my presentation, which I cannot at the moment. Okay, do you see it?
Yes, there's something coming. Now we see it. Yes.
Okay. All right. So yes, patience. Thank you for this opportunity. And yes, it is an honor to summarize the results of cities multimodal project. Well, not the whole project, but I think this part of multimodality, which we had in terms of planning and actually implementing infrastructure was really interesting, extraordinary in Interact projects, and very good opportunity to combine theory with practice. So I think what we succeeded with all our pilots, which I will tell a little bit, I will, and in details my colleagues will. So what we succeed, we tested our theory, our invented theory, maybe let's say so, in real pilot projects, and we already have some results to share. So this is my mission today, to talk about multimodality and summarize what was happening in this let's say chapter of the project. So first of all, out of those 10 partners which were named by and mentioned by Sini, 6 of us, we actually were implementing multimodality points in our cities, and we were testing different concepts, different types of mobility points, addressing different issues, and and facing different problems, and of course receiving different results. So I think that was really good combination of different practices, of different experiences, and after summarizing everything into the one thing, as a result, we prepared, when I say we, I do not mean Vilnius, I mean cities multimodal partners. We prepared a handbook for next generation of multimodality planners. So we put all the tips and all our checking points, which could be handy and help you in your daily life, in your daily routines when planning and evaluating, implementing, and initiating multimodality things in your city. So before I continue with multimodality approach, I think it's I know what you know, but I think it's important to mention once again that when we talk about multimodality in our CMM project, we do not talk about traveling of goods, which would be rather intermodality. We do not. We are talking only about the mobility and moving people with different sustainable, switching from one to another sustainable mode of transport. We do not speak about cargo delivery from ship to the rail, and so on. That is why our testing area and our pilots always were focused onto the citizens multimodality and moving passengers not good. And about the mobility point, we did not jump into this mobility point concept very straightforward. Those of you who were following my slides, my first slide, you probably saw that we also had in this multimodality topic, we have a subtopic of sustainable urban mobility planning. So what we normally did, most of the partners, we in our pilot area, we really research mobility conditions at the moment and conditions to intersect different sustainable transport modes. And the result of this research, the result of challenges to be solved in each pilot area, led us to conclude that mobility point is one of the most visible, although it is new supply for passengers, but we found it like a good measure to test and to improve multimodality in our pilot areas. And then if it's successful, to multiply in the whole cities as a network. So for successful implementation, which might look very simple when you see the technical design of the mobility points, it might seem very simple thing to purchase a bicycle shed or to deliver an information stand, but it's not that simple, and some phases need to be recognized in this process and to be followed, because if you miss something in the concept phase, or if you do not think in the concept phase about something which it would be happening in implementation phase, you might really meet very unexpected barriers, like you thought that you have land but you don't, or you thought that you can invite shared vehicles businesses to your mobility point, but you don't. So a lot of small things and a lot of big issues could be met in this process. Therefore, it is very important to start from good initiating and good planning. And in this concept stage, there are a lot of known things which you already know, like the political support needed, finances, and implementation plan involving citizens. We talked about this already in the last and previous and webinars before, but in mobility point stage, what is very important in concept stage, to answer very clearly to yourself if mobility point is the answer, what was the question then? Because when we had the peer reviews with partners, different partners in different cities, sometimes it could be obvious that a mobility point was target itself. It shouldn't be so. Mobility point should answer some, at least few of your needs to improve something in your city. Those questions should be addressed in concept stage. Only when you answer them, only when you know who's your target group, what problems do you want to solve, what results do you want to achieve, how you plan to monitor it, and what facilities, what budget, what in terms of location you have. Only after this you can think about next stage implementation, and already about construction, about land needed, about software and all the things. Otherwise, if you start from implementation stage, which happened with some of the partners in the process, then you may end up with good thing, which is nice to have in the area, because it doesn't really match all the needs which passengers in the city has. So if briefly about each of them, I already mentioned it, that knowing goals and knowing the results you are expecting to achieve with this measure, with mobility point measure, it is very important also to describe them in measurable manner, so you can then monitor them and evaluate. But of course, it's very important to know that if you are implementing very local measure in very local place, you cannot really expect to change the model split for whole city, or to decrease pollution in the whole city like 10% or so on. But you can really aim for like achieving better perception of sustainable mobility, decreasing transit in the area, or doing a lot of small things which together put some result and effect in the area, and some small result in the city maybe afterwards too. Also, as I said already, you need to define not only whom to work with, which is the lesson we know already very good, NGOs and planners and stakeholders and citizens involvement and support from ministries and so on. These are things necessary and already hygiene in our project. So I think there is no point to repeat it for me again, but what I want to repeat is whom you're addressing your mobility point, your target group is very essential question in this concept stage. If you aim to decrease transit in this area because you have like linear pilot area and you want to have mobility point at the end, at the beginning of the area before entrance, for example, to the city center, then you want to think and discuss about particular kind of measures and features of this mobility point. If you want to use this mobility point as a measure for citizens, like which could serve like first last mile measures, so you then must think about another features of this mobility point and how to improve accessibility to the mobility point and out of it to the city center. If you think about a mobility point like the end stop for some target point users, like big campus areas or hospital areas, then this mobility point again should have another feature. So these are very important things before you start planning, because then you see that you need to already to summarize and to implement, but you didn't think about very important things in terms, for example, of software or design, or as I said already, accessibility and so on. And the third thing, which is very important in concept stage, is homeworks. You cannot expect to have very successful usage of mobility point in the area where public transport is not effective, where public transport doesn't have priority, where parking is free, where there are no bicycle lanes and the safety is very bad, or there are no shared mobility system. So in that area, you cannot really think about very successful. It would be like appendix next to the environment if you do not have all the sustainable transport modes and conditions to use them, and just build mobility points. So don't think about those mobility points where you have land, for example. I have public land out of the city, then I build mobility point. No, you must think about all other features which would contribute to this mobility point. So these are the main, I'd say subtopics in this concept stage to think about before actually start planning. And then you already answer all their questions about to whom, why, where to plan mobility point, then concept becomes much more clear, and you can choose or bicycle pavilion next to the train station, like one of our partners did in Sweden, or we can discuss a small network of mobility points in the linear area, like we did in Vilnius, or any other. Also, I think I've mentioned aspects for selecting location, but once just to summarize, you shouldn't think about successful mobility point in the place where, for example, city center is parking is for free. No one would stop in your mobility point to switch to public transport if he is going somewhere where he can park for free, or no one would use public transport in the crowded area where it has no priority. Like in Vilnius, we had discussions with citizens, and our first proposed mobility point was neglected because we said it's already very crowded in public transport in this place. Why would we accommodate another 100 users in the public transport, which cannot take away existing passengers? So all these aspects should be discussed. Then when you plan, when you have your questions, of course, you may wish to involve another actors like experts or car sharing operators, because as much commercialized this area is, I mean, if this area has at least a small business case, then it has bigger chance to be a perspective and used like the same with cargo bikes, for example. If they are operated by private business, when they are used and located in much better places and situation, then sometimes it happens with public authorities because we do not have the same tools to do investment projects and so on. So you might like to have external mobility people or business people or environmental people to help you with your ideas. And then it's implementation. Of course, that varies very much from city to city, but these are the main bullet points to discuss before you start design. Will it be visible? How to apply IT solutions? Is it possible to get building permit? Who owns the land? How much tender procedures would go? There are a lot of details, and devil is in the details, and Lisa and Ausra and Riga will tell about it more. But these are very important things before implementing, not after thing is already standing. So I know that my time is just about the end. So very briefly, in our project, we described 3 types of multimodality points. No one dared to build in the scope of this project full mobility point with all the facilities, with recreational zones, with delivery rooms for goods and so on. So no one out of 6 partners did it, but this is very well-known concept in Luxembourg countries, and I think there are already promising results to be inspired by. Small mobility points were built in Vilnius, just about to finish, in Sweden, and a couple of Sweden, and very minimum mobility points will be also presented today. We're built in Rostock, in Riga, in Argos, and good experience are coming back from it. And almost last slide, but not least, communication. I already said that it's very important because we talked about it in the second webinar of our cycle, and monitoring. Just what I said in the beginning, I would like to end my presentation with this. If you want to monitor your effect from very beginning of your project, you want to know what you want to achieve, what result should bring this measure, what impact it should do on pilot area, and maybe what effect on the whole area and sustainable mobility system should this mobility point do. Once you know it, you can really measure it. You can measure it with your target group, you can measure it in your target area, or in the bigger area. There are a lot of examples delivered in our project for you to be inspired. So yes, so thank you for listening, and yeah, just make a photo of these 6 success factors: to have objective, to identify your target group, to choose good location, and then building, branding, promoting, campaigning, and monitoring after all. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy, for not saying anything, but I knew that I need to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristina, for opening this webinar.
And I also had a clock to
That's great. And yeah, we're very important points for the success factors. But yeah, now we will move on to Rostock and Lisa Wiechmann. And while Lisa is sharing her screen, I would like to remind you of the opportunity of asking our panelists some questions. We have some minutes reserved for Q&A, for actually answering the questions in the end of this webinar, so don't be shy. But now I can see that Lisa has successfully shared her screen, so please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Zini. And thank you for this opportunity to present our approach here in Rostock, how we answered all those questions that Kristina raised during her presentation, which was a very nice introduction to our approach, the approach in cities multimodal to build up mobility points and how we defined mobility points in the frame of this project. I'd like to give you some information about, as I said, how we answered those questions of who is our target group, why do we want to build up a mobility point, and where do we finally locate it. And then I would like to give some more insights into how we involved our stakeholders and how we communicated the mobility points here in Rostock. But first of all, maybe some general few information about the city of Rostock. We have 200,000 inhabitants that are located in the Baltic Sea, I mean close to the Baltic Sea, of course, at the coast. We are, as you can see on the picture below, not only located at the Baltic Sea, but I also have the river Vano, which is separating the city in two parts. We have since the end of 2019 a new mayor, Klaus Madsen, which is from Danish, or who has Danish origins, and his aim is to make Rostock a cycling city, and follow a little bit the idol of Copenhagen maybe. We have some facts about our mobility system here in Rostock. You can see that we have quite a good share of pedestrians. In Rostock we have 18% of cyclists, and also a quite important share of public transports with 17%, but we still have also a very important part or big part of car transportation with nearly 35%. But our objective is to reduce the share of car transportation, our modal split, to 30% until 2025. And for that we have some different strategic strategies and concepts, like the mobility management concept or our e-mobility strategy, and especially our master plan mobility, which is kind of a sustainable urban mobility plan. And a part of this mobility plan is also the objective to promote sustainable transport, to promote also multimodal transport, and to build and to promote car sharing as one option of sustainable transport, in order to increase the share of sustainable transport modes in our modal split. As I think Kristina also said, we during our project focused on specific city quarters, which are located in the very heart of the cities. We in Rostock decided to for a pilot area, which is the Krüppeline Torvorstadt, which is the city quarter with very narrow streets, where there's a very high pressure in terms of car traffic, and a lot of cars parking in these very narrow streets. And this is why we decided to that this city quarter will be our pilot area. So there's high pressure to do something and to find new solutions and to provide alternatives to private car use on the one hand, but on the other hand there was also it is quite young and vivid city quarter with students and young families, and so we thought there is also like a target group that is open to new mobility services and to try out new mobility behavior. So and the objective of to build up mobility points was so to provide to residents alternatives, so that owning a private car is not really necessary, but that you have quite convenient alternative to that. So this might be public transport, but this might be also other mobility services. So this is why we decided in the frame of the project to build up mobility points, and you can see here on the picture that which is from our opening ceremony in May last year, that we also were able to open our first mobility point. In the frame of the project, we realized 3 mobility points, all located in this city quarter Krüppeline Torvorstadt. It took us 2 years of concept development and planning. So this, I think you should not underestimate. It's quite long process. As you know, Kristina presented, there's a lot of questions that need to be raised and answered. In total, we invested 130,000 euros for all 3 locations for planning and also real construction works. We as city are the owner or the initiator of these mobility points, but the mobility services that are provided are operated by different service providers. So what kind of services can you find on our mobility points in Rostock? We wanted, or our objective was to promote sharing solutions, and that's why our mobility points provide space for car sharing cars of car sharing providers that are already in Rostock, but we also provide spaces for a cargo bike sharing scheme that we also initiated in the frame of cities multimodal. So there's so at our mobility points you can find a cargo bike to do your shopping or transport your children or so from A to B, but you can also find a car sharing car. And we try to locate our mobility points close to public transport so that it is easy to interchange between these different mobility options and solutions. And we provide, wherever possible, also services for cyclists, like as you can see in the middle of the slide, we provide a repair kit for bicycles or a small repair station, but also additional bicycle racks and so. And all these different offers are operated by different service providers. As I said, I'd like to give some more information about our communication and involvement approach. And as you can see on this slide, we also decided to have a quite attractive design of these mobility points and different elements that make these new mobility options visible, so that every mobility point has this info stela that you can see in the middle, which has nearly 4 meters height, and some this stela does not only make it quite visible also from far that there is a mobility point, but also provides additional information on the mobility options that are available at the mobility point, but also about mobility options that are available in the close surrounding. And in the frame of the project, we developed this design and also this kind of brand Mobilpunkt to really implement a brand, because we realized the first 3 pilots, but the objective in Rostock is to have a network of such mobility points. So to make it very visible for all residents and all citizens and also guests, that there is a mobility point and that there I can find car sharing or cargo bike or so. So you can see the elements of this info stela. There's also a map giving some information on close points of interest like supermarkets or sites also. And every mobility offer, like every car sharing space or every cargo bike space, has an additional info sign, a smaller one, saying that this is a car sharing space, to make the new offers very visible. And in addition, we also used these green stones to make the car sharing parking lots visible and to show this is a specific parking space which is dedicated to car sharing and which is not a normal public parking space, let's say. How did we involve our different stakeholders and who might be the stakeholders? Of course, politicians, citizens, and civil servants are our stakeholders, but also our mobility service providers. For example, the mobility service providers, we involved them by discussing how such a mobility point should look like and which kind of information should, for example, go on this info stela or need to be on this info sign. But also the public transport provider RSAG was involved from the beginning in the whole planning project of our mobility points. And although it's quite common in other cities that public transport providers are also owners of mobility points, this is not the case here in Rostock. But this might also be a solution. We involved our citizens. For example, as I said, we integrated a cargo bike sharing scheme in our mobility points, and we have an annual event, which is the Climate Action Day here in Rostock. And during this event, we ask our citizens, what do you think, what kind of cargo bike type are you? Because there are different kind of cargo bikes with 2 wheels or 3 wheels, with electronic support or not. And we, before preparing this tender documents, we decided to ask our citizens, okay, what do you think? What kind of cargo bikes would you like to have in your mobility points? And they could also test these bikes afterwards. So this finally helped us to decide on a type of cargo bike for this tender. Then we also involved the city quarter council, which is like a local parliament. This parliament was involved in the whole planning process from the beginning on. This was kind of one of the first things we did, to go to the city quarter council and present the idea of mobility points and what is it. And then this council also voted for having these 3 pilots in its city quarter. So we could be sure that we have the support of this political body, which was very important for the success. And these politicians, together with also our civil servants and other stakeholders, were also invited to take part in a workshop where we developed our communication strategy. So we invited these politicians and our colleagues from the communication department and also from the mobility department to think about how could we communicate this new mobility points, what are different elements, what shall we think about it. And I think this was very important, because there was a kind of commitment from these politicians also to have these mobility points in the city quarter. And the one output of this communication strategy that we developed was that we, for example, decided to send an info letter to all residents that are living in the surrounding of the new 3 mobility point locations before the construction works started, to inform the residents, okay, what's going on there, why are there construction works, and what will be built there, because we did not build new parking spaces, but we provided existing 1-2 car sharing. So in a city quarter where parking pressure is already very high, it was important to really communicate and say, okay, we will take off public parking spots, but we will provide an alternative mobility solution for you. And we also, as you can see here, designed a flyer and set up a website promoting and informing about mobility points. We did a lot of classic communication work with press information and also social media. And we invited also all our stakeholders to a public mobility point opening in May, which was, I think, also quite important. So that we invited them to test the cargo bikes and the car sharing cars, and to discover this new mobility points. So I think I have to come to an end. And yeah, these are the most important facts about how we communicated and involved our stakeholders here in Rostock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for an interesting presentation about the Rostock mobility points. Now we will move on to another city and another set of mobility points. So please, I would like to welcome Ausra Siciuniene from Vilnius.
Just a moment. Yes, hello, good morning. Thank you, Sini, for introducing me. And during these minutes, I'll try to be very short and concrete in presenting our way of planning of multimodality points here in Vilnius. And the main focus is going to be on our lessons learned and our challenges, because all the process, which seemed to be quite easy from the beginning, it looked quite complicating during all these 2 years. But let's start from the very start of the project. Actually, we were very ambitious in 2017 and 2018, while having the pilot area of Antakalnis living district, which is here. And we were thinking that the most interesting point gonna be to start our multimodality understanding from the opening up the park and ride facilities just on the edge of the city, and having multimodality point implemented at the same place of park and ride would be the good issue. So after the presenting the project proposal at the first round for the public, for the community, for the society, for neighbors of the area, we got the very, very negative actually response because a very unexpected negative response from the society, just because of the green lawn gonna be taken from their side. And definitely nobody wanted to have a huge conflict with the people, and also due to some juridical aspects, land issues, we decided a little bit to go back and to look for the other solutions that could be not so sensitive for the people living around. So instead of that, our working group together with the main partner, our company, Public Transport, we were looking for the other possibility to have the smaller multimodality points also in the same district of Antakalnis. And we found really good spots, 2 places, as you see here, just on the main arteria of the Antakalnis district, on the main street, and just in very close proximity to the river, where we have the main bicycle route, and also where the public transport is very intensive, and that could serve all the passengers, both for suburban district, those passengers who are going to the center, and we could use those multimodality spots as a main places in the area. Situation during those years has been changed, because we need already to be very specific with the technical specification. What we really would like to have all this on this multimodality points, and the main focus, what we decided, it's going to be on the bicycle shelters. And from the start, we thought it's okay, maybe just to purchase the ready product from the producers, to look on the marketing in different European countries, and just to buy the ready bicycle shelter, and that's it. But we were squeezed so much by the requirements from the city, because we need to adapt the territory to the certain parameters. We have to be very careful about the installation, about electricity, about the engineering, about the networks, and so on and so forth. And also it should be very unique and not, I mean, it should be certain design and there should be certain colors because of some requirements of cultural heritage department. So our company, design company of municipality was working on a technical specification, and our main task was to go for the public procurement with this project. And so the main lessons what we have learned, it's actually we did not really were active on the market, finding out is it really the need or the hunger for this type of the product among the suppliers, among the producers. And actually we were mistaken because after we were so sure that during the public procurement process we're gonna get so many volunteers to come into the tender, but unfortunately we failed in the first round of the public procurement, and we got actually 0 volunteers to be ready to help us and to build that smart bicycle shelter. And yes, we already got the May of 2020, and we stuck with the situation as it was from the very beginning. So what should we do? But strange enough, we should say thank you to COVID lockdown, and that's why we got extra month as the project was prolonged. So with all team of all working team, we decided to go for the next round of the public procurement, and so we were working very hard on the adaptation of the technical specification, and we were looking for the market very actively. We were communicating with the potential suppliers, potential producers, and speeding up all the bureaucratic procedures within the departments of the municipality. That helped us a lot. And already in September 2020, we got the contract signed with the producer. So of course, this, as I say, it was not that easy to coordinate all the project during a couple of months, and going from one department to the other, finding out the certain requirements from the cultural heritage department, finding out some requirements for the design, for the electricity, for the territory, for engineering, and so on and so forth. So it took again us longer than we expected, and probably it's very important to stress again for all, let's say, people that or all those planners that never be sure about the deadlines. If we are planning the one deadline, it could be much longer than you expected. The processes are taking quite a lot of time. But okay, we got the two products ready in 2 multimodality points in January this year. And as you see here, we already have, in one spot, we have 36 places. In the other, the smaller one, we got a little bit less, but still, it's the product is ready, but the rest of the tasks to be fulfilled are still on the table. First of all, it's important to stress that the city is going now very actively with implementation of all new logo system for the multimodality. It's so-called UDU. To translate from Lithuanian, it's gonna be like I am moving. So the most important thing is to have is to have this logo together with the multimodality points, and it's going to be done in a couple of weeks' time. And definitely, as we are working together with our public transport company, Birute, who is the project coordinator of the company, it's a lot of things on their shoulders. There's the responsibility for the smart lock system, for responsibility for maintenance, and the lot of things that are going to be in the forward coming times. So therefore, it's very important again to stress that the things that we were planning from the very beginning and the task that we already have today, it need to be revised very, very much in advance. And today we have the list of the issues needed to be solved, and we need to decide really how we proceed with this novelty, which I would say here in Vilnius, so-called multimodality points, and to communicate with the people what it is, and really how safe it's gonna be from various parts. First of all, who's gonna be responsible for the insurance, for the protection of the property. And then we should decide really, is it these smart bicycle shelters going to be for all users or only from the certain age? Then again, what will be the system of penalties or fine in case something happens? Then what about the personal data protection in case of electronic locking system, which is going to be definitely installed? And who and how important is to have a certain instruction which should be very understandable for all type of users. And then the final and the most important, I think, it's definitely the design, which is just under development right now. So it's so forth and so on. It's so many things to be discussed among all the stakeholders, and therefore it's probably the most important lessons that we have learned is just to be very clear from the very beginning that all parts of all stakeholders participating in the project of this new concept, because it's as I said before, it's a pilot project, not because of the cities multimodal project, but it's a pilot for understanding of people what it is, because up till today nobody really have an idea what is this multimodality is about. It's bicycle shelters, it's understandable. Park and ride, it's already understandable issue, but the multimodality is still the terra incognita. So just going to the end and maybe sharing the floor with Birute, I would like to repeat myself and say that it's important to be very careful about the planning, always mind the deadlines, and in our case, it's very important to have in mind that juridical issues of the land are really critical. And then again, talking about communication, it's also important to stress that we need to we need to communicate with potential suppliers, yes, from the very beginning. But then with the potential users, we need to communicate also on the right time. That not always the communication without the certain message is going to be successful. And we need to be always sure that new ideas not always positively approved by citizens. So final message, definitely, what maybe I'm repeating myself again, is just a well-organized cooperation of all stakeholders will lead to the final result achievement. If I would like to share my screen with Birute. Birute, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Would you like just to add from your side about the public transport company? What are the main focuses right now? Where we are, and what we need to do?
I think you mentioned a lot, and then we don't have much time, but I will just emphasize that it's very important to begin thinking about a multimodal point much in advance, and not just thinking but also planning, because every day new challenges appear, and even though there are specialists around, but many things are become new. So you have to be very careful and then plan much in advance. Thank you, Ausra, you did it great.
Thank you, both Ausra and Birute, for sharing your important lessons learned. Next on the agenda, we have Nika Kotovica from the Riga Energy Agency, and she will share the Riga Mobility Point experience.
Yes, hello everybody. First of all, I do hope that you hear me.
Yes.
Yes, and so you also see the full.
Correct. Perfect.
Okay. Yes, so I'm representing the city of Riga. I know you will hear another story of developing a mobility point, and I will focus on one of the most important aspects for our mobility point, on collecting of open real-time urban data for further analysis at the municipality. So first of all, why we are speaking about this multimodality and mobility points in Riga, similarly like in two other cities, what you have heard now, one of the key challenges is this high traffic level in the city center, and at the same time there's a low willingness of local inhabitants to change their mobility behavior towards sustainable mobility, unless this sustainable mobility offers the same convenience as the private car. So that is evident, and that data comes from several research. So what else about the baseline in Riga? It's very important to understand that the municipality of Riga is working hard to make public transport as convenient as possible, because this is probably the main driver for having a real multimodality in the city. So today, almost 58% already of public transportation in Riga are provided with sustainable so are fed by sustainable energy sources. So we have electric transportation, hydrogen buses, and so on. And however, the situation is very challenging, because in parallel, we are elaborating now a new sustainable climate and energy plan for the city of Riga, and we recently have done evaluation of all the sectors of the city of Riga, so how much CO2 these sectors produce, And what we can see for the transportation and mobility, the number of cars in Riga is growing. So likewise, other cities in Europe. So the number of cars is growing. And together with growing number of cars, the CO2 emissions from transportation are growing too. Despite all the activities what the city of Riga is doing in this field, we are successful in other fields, so which is not the topic of today's webinar. So in average, we are still managing to reduce CO2 emissions in the whole city at a good speed. However, the transportation is really the most challenging area for the city. And moreover, the transportation sector represents 47% of all CO2 emissions, and currently being the largest polluter, despite everything that I said before. So what you can learn from that slide, that actually the red color is the public transport, which is already very green, but this big blue portion is all the private transport and commercial transport registered in Riga. And we also, as a capital, have a problem of incoming transport from other regions and cities of Latvia and probably also abroad. So, okay, but now let's go to the top. So just to make the story clear, I will very briefly go through how we developed our mobility point so that you understand what was our way in the city of Riga. So our mobility point has a slightly different focus than in two other cities. So we are primarily focusing on offer of multimodality and shared mobility, and we are focusing on connecting public transportation system with shared mobility modes and cycling network. In Riga, we have chosen a pilot site where we have a very active local residents, and we believe that those residents will be active users of our mobility point, and we were right. So, but this will come in the next slides. And we have not started with developing and prototyping just one mobility point, but as you have heard from the previous speaker, from Ausra, she emphasized that you need to plan mobility points as early as possible. So this is exactly what Riga did. Before prototyping the first mobility point, we made a extensive study for the whole Riga city territory, and we defined like 58 locations where mobility points potentially could be located, as well as a lot of prerequisites. So how should they like? What functions should they cover? And many other aspects. So what was the Riga solution then? So compared to other mobility points in Europe, the solution developed in Riga is really unique because it takes in consideration not only the needs of mobility of our local inhabitants of the city, but also the interest of scientists and entrepreneurs involved in data collecting, opening up and promoting innovative data solutions. So our mobility point includes those two aspects: mobility offer and collecting of open urban data. Let's have a look at it closer. So the mobility point itself, it has a number of technical equipment and a number of functions, and that's really like convenient bicycle parking spaces, bicycle repair station, smart solar bench with solar charging, and etc. But today I will more focus on another aspect, which is this innovation test bed. So as the next slide suggests, our mobility point was opened in 1st of July 2020. it wasn't smooth for us also to develop and to build it. However, in Riga, it was a bit easier than in Vilnius, and our delay was just maybe about 1 month, but we managed to open it, and it's into operation now for half of a year and a little bit more. So let's have a look. So what are the very first results? So for this mobility point part, we are collecting from the day one data from the pedestrian and bicycle counter, and the situation is following that during the first 6 months, we can see that many in this specific area of Riga, the share of bikers is really high compared to people who are walking. So yeah, definitely the number of people walking nearby this counter is a bit bigger than bikes, but you see that the share is 44 to 56. What else is important? That here you can see the graph for the 6 months from July to December of last year. And let's remember that this is in a COVID situation when many activities in the city were very limited. Still, we have very impressive figures, especially during the first 3 months of operation, which are considered to be a summer season. And the figures are going down here, but it doesn't mean that the mobility point or the bicycle cycling is getting less popular. So this is normal for Latvian winter and for our weather conditions. So we think that actually the figures here for the biking, the blue ones, are very optimistic also for December. And now to the testbed station, which I am promising you already in several slides. So what is it? And why was this important for us in Riga to have this unique feature for our mobility point? So first of all, at the mobility point, we have that pole with electricity where different private operators can adjust and put their different urban surveillance technologies and test them in a real urban environment. At the same time, there is a requirement that everyone who tests their equipment at this mobility point is obliged to publish, to open up the data which is created at this urban mobility test bed. So you can see here on the slide what kind of data we are currently measuring. So quite a lot of different data sets on urban environment. And currently there's a website where everyone who is interested can go in and have a look at this particular place. What is the humidity? What are the CO2 levels? So how about the noise monitoring, and etc. and etc. But what is the most important, that this is very successful collaboration of the municipality and private operators to make this data open. So as I said, currently there is a website where this data is available. Unfortunately, it's not yet the state or the municipality website, but we are working as part of other projects and initiatives in the city of Riga to make such a municipal portal where this and other similar data will be gathered, collected, processed, analyzed, and etc. What we see today in urban planning of Riga, that we actually cannot make the climate scenarios for our city without open data, because nowadays urban planning is very much related to modeling of different scenarios, and we are using sophisticated modeling tools. So therefore, this open data is extremely important for us. And the main conclusion from this part of the mobility point for us is that it's not enough to make the data open. This data needs to be made usable as well, and this we can do in efficient collaboration among private sector and public sector. And definitely we couldn't do it in Riga with our partners who have helped us to develop the concept of the mobility point and implement it, as well as to provide all the mobility and shared mobility services at our mobility point. And in conclusion, I will once again stress out that this was just a first pilot and a very small mobility point compared to others what the city of Riga is planning to implement in near future. So this first mobility point is a prototype which will serve as the basis for further development of mobility points in Riga and potentially also in other cities of Latvia, and why not also abroad. And important is that the city of Riga has already earmarked municipal funding for development of next 4 to 6 mobility points in the city of Riga in near future. I will end right now here on this positive note to give us also some time for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nika. You have a very, very cool mobility point, and I'm sure that your plans for the future will benefit a lot from this first piloting. But yeah, we have one more presentation coming up. We have Michael Abraham, who will present the mobility points from an evaluation perspective. So go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so you hear me already?
Yes.
You see the presentation in presentation mode?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So I start. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. I will talk about what did we learn from the pilots of mobility points in the cities multimodal cities, and about the process evaluation results. And you might ask, what is process evaluation at all? And that's why I just briefly explain it, what we understand by it. And of course, in cities multimodal, we were looking into the impacts which are coming from the measure implementations, but that's one thing, to see what the impacts are and the results are, in, let's say, in terms of CO2 reductions. But it's even same time equally important to look at the processes. How were the measures implemented? So we want to really understand why and how measure implementations are working or not. And this is an important question to find out if the measure can be transferred to another city, because we are looking into the conditions in which measures are implemented. Another reason for doing process evaluation is that other cities really can learn from the experiences made. And you've seen it already today from the 3 cities we were talking about. They were talking about the processes of implementing mobility points, and they shared their experiences made with you. And of course, you can learn from this. Everybody can learn from this who is interested in doing other mobility points in their own city. And you can learn from the failures, but also you can learn from the successes that were achieved in the cities. And a last point for doing a process evaluation is to enable improvements of the ongoing development. That means we are having process evaluation assessments every year in cities multimodal. And in the beginning, we are asking what problems occurred and so on. And so this experience can be utilized for the later process of implementing and planning. So it's also for the ongoing project. Next slide. And how are we doing the process evaluation? I don't want to go into the details now because it's maybe too complicated and not important for now. But what we are doing is we are having simple questionnaires or interviews with all of the project partners. And we are asking them which barriers occurred or which drivers occurred. So which problems or which good things that you maybe didn't expect. How did they influence or the process of planning or implementing your measure? And what was your resulting activity from the problems? How did you solve them? And in the end, of course, what is the lesson learned from all this process? And we're trying to do this in a systematic way. So in the end, we can say which were the most important barriers or the most important lessons learned during the project. And some of them I will show you now. We already were talking about Rostock in the beginning of the this webinar. And this is just to show you how we are showing the results of process evaluation. So you see the circle here, and we are showing which barriers occurred, also which drivers, like problems or good things, and then how the city reacted on this, and what was the lesson learned. And here in Rostock, for example, Lisa reported today and before to me that in the beginning of the planning process of the mobility points, it was really hard to get approvals for the implementations of the mobility point, like the approvals for the constructions in public space, because there was no such case before in the city, and it was just hard to find the legal basis for it. And the responsive action of the city, what Lisa did was to inquire advice from other experts or experiences from other cities. In this case, I think it was mostly Bremen, and they had a look at Bremen, how they did it. And this helped to convince the local leading politicians or leading people in the administration to really do this, and it demonstrated them that it is doable. So this was the lesson learned, really take advantage of the experiences that are already there and take them to convince your mayors to support you, for example. So this is one case that how we show the experiences and the lessons learned. Another one is Aarhus. They are not in the project anymore, but in the beginning, they were part of the project for 3 years. And what you see here is their mobility point, which is basically a bicycle station, let's say it like that. It's they have cargo bikes for free renting for the residents who live close by in this dense residential area. And they also have bicycle parking places. And this mobility point is a mobility point because it's close by a bus stop, so that you can easily combine different modes of transportation. They implemented it already in early 2019. And of course, this was the beginning of the pandemic situation. And so they had not many users. And also they couldn't do the assessment surveys with the users. But still, by observation, they found out that people are looking at it and that they are interested in these mobility points. And so they reacted with a responsive activity in doing an online survey with the residents here. And this was quite astonishing because people really were active, and they told them that they liked the idea, and they made really suggestions on how to improve it and to do maybe a different design. And also they made suggestions for putting them on other locations as well in the city. And so the lesson from this story was that the dialogue is really important. The dialogue between the municipality and the citizens. And this should be an ongoing process, and it helps to spread the idea of multimodality and to create awareness for the topic. The last example is from Vilnius. We heard a lot of Vilnius today, and they made precious experiences concerning the process of implementing mobility points. And as Ausra already said in her presentation, one barrier was in the beginning the tender process, like the procurement. It was because the mobility points, of course, were a new thing in the city, and there were a lot of internal discussions going on how to shape the mobility point, which services should be allocated there, how should the design look like, where's the exact location, stuff like that. And all this came into this tender and made the tender quite complex. And that's why it was difficult in the beginning to do the procurement. But one responsive action also here was, or another driver, was that the online communication by social media really helped to get new ideas on how to solve this problem and how to reshape the tender. And so in the end, the lesson learned here was also that communication is really key. And it's also about communication, internal communication between the project partners, but also with potential users of the mobility point. And also another lesson learned was what happens locally should be communicated locally. These are 3 examples of all our experiences that we gathered in the whole project, and we're trying to group them into fields of experiences. Okay, Sini, I don't have so much time left. Is that correct? Okay, so I just want to show you here that we have 2 common learning experiences fields already. One is about communication and one is about stakeholder involvement. And the common learning experiences mean that many cities made the same experiences with implementing mobility points. And of course, here it is crucial to identify the most important stakeholders who need to be involved. And it takes really time. And the city parliaments and authorities should be informed comprehensively at an early stage of the project. That was one of the main lessons that also occurred in the communication field, that it's really key to inform the relevant people at an early stage and comprehensively, and by taking examples from other successful cities. So you see, I won't explain all these experiences made now because time is over, but I'm sure we can share this presentation with you, and in the end we will also have an evaluation report in which we will present these experiences. So this would be my final point. Thank you, Sini.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will move on to the Q&A slot of this webinar, and I will hand over to Esther.
Yes, thank you. We have mainly 2 questions that I would like to take up that came in the chat and in the Q&A box from our audience. And we start with a short question, very practical question to Lisa about your cargo bike sharing system. That can you tell a bit more, like what is the scheme that you are using? Like, can you, like, how long is the rental time, or like how can people test those cargo bikes?
Yes, the cargo bike sharing scheme is a very small one for now. There are 3 bikes available one at each mobility point, and these bikes can be rented for free at the moment for up to 6 hours. We are at the moment preparing a new tender and will increase the number of bikes available from summer on, and then will introduce also a tariff system, let's say. But for now, it's for free, and you can just download the app and then access the bikes. Or even if you don't want to use your smartphone, you can also come to the provider's office and get a RFID card and then access the cargo bikes.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps here I just want to mention also to all the attendees, I mean, we will make all the material available, also the presentations, and I think in all the presentations you also find the contact details of our speakers today. So if you have very concrete questions, which I think is great to get to exchange on, you can then contact the person in question directly as well. And I'm sure everybody is happy to share some details. The second thing I wanted to take up was a question or also a comment, and I think it's actually a very important one. It's perhaps not a question that one of you can answer, but perhaps some of you could comment on that, because this was a comment or a question on the importance of integrated also the active modes of mobility to mobility points. I mean, as we have seen, mobility points appear in different shapes and versions and in different ways how they are implemented. Though often I think many cities use mobility points to with a focus on public transport or car sharing and let's say vehicles. And the attendee who wrote the comment, I think very correctly commented how important it is to integrate also the safety of people who walk, people who cycle to the mobility point, and in general integrate the active modes also into the mobility points. We have seen that Riga is doing this actively also with the measuring data then and counting pedestrians, etc. But I would like to ask. The question came up in the introduction already, but I would like to ask some of you, if somebody wants to comment on this, like how do you integrate the active modes into your mobility points, for example, in Rostock or in Vilnius? Yes, Lisa, you can just
yeah, maybe I just start. I think that's a very good point how you can integrate it. We, to be honest, did not actively do it, but besides what I mentioned, that we integrated additional bicycle racks and bicycle repair kits. So we have also provide offers for cyclists to access the mobility points and then switch to another mode and take it. So, and we got the feedback that this was very good and very positive. What we did not, but what was learning out of our process is to think of lightening, so to integrate light at the mobility point so that this is a space that is accessible at all times, also during the night or so, that you feel comfortable even when there's little light, so to say, to make it attractive also for pedestrians.
Yes, I think that in general, that accessibility is also a very important topic, like how you can access the mobility point and so on. Okay, thank you. Anybody else of the speakers who would like to comment on that?
Maybe I could. Well, just to summarize, I saw a better question, and that was also a key message from my presentation, that accessibility on foot by bicycle to the mobility point is crucial, and also possibility to get out by effective public transport from mobility point is also crucial. Otherwise, they became recreation zones, nice to have zones, and smart things in the city, but not functioning like mobility point. So these are conditions a must: good accessibility and good access by public transport. And in Vilnius, both locations are on intersections of fast routes of buses, in order to serve those who are accessing fast route of bus and priority lanes.
Yes, thank you, Kristina. Yeah, I think this is just something, I mean, every city perhaps is still, I mean, we're all still learning and approaching this a bit differently, but this is, I think, a very important point to probably be put into the into our lessons learned and so on, that this is important to keep in mind. There were actually now popping up two more questions. I just would like to quickly take those as well, even though we are a little bit now after time, but I hope it's okay for you. So there is one question on is all the mobility integrated in one platform on the mobility points, or different providers with different applications? So this refers then to do you use, or who of you are using like several kind of apps, and do you have all the services combined in one app, or are the providers using different apps? For example, how is it in Riga?
Well, currently there is no one app connecting all of those offers, but actually in parallel, the city of Riga is thinking of that, and we are working on that. So that's the future. Yeah. And if I have a chance, I will just add one sentence to the previous question, that every city needs to realize that mobility points network is an essential and integral part of transport planning in each city. So if it's not a part of planning, you will never reach the results, because the mobility point itself will not work if there are no incentives from the city and there are no also instruments regulatory. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Nika, for that comment still. And then there's one more question, but I think I will take the freedom to actually answer this myself. The question is about what are the perspectives for all the installed mobility points after the official project closure? And I think you actually all said it. I mean, during the project lifetime, now 3.5 years, this was the purpose of the project was to pilot mobility points in our cities. And you all presented that in all the cities there are plans now. Some have already implemented more than one mobility point, and all of you are planning to actually increase the network of mobility points in your city. So the piloting as such seemed to have been very successful. So I assume you will all continue with that, and I think this is a very nice result from our project. Okay, but as we are now already a little past 11 or past 12, wherever you are, we will now come to the end. So thank you all for asking questions. And as I said, like, you will get all the material will be made available for all attendees. And I'll pass on to Sini again. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. So just quickly before ending this last webinar session, thank you all for hanging in here this far. I would like to promote still our main publications that can be found on our website. The first one is the Planner's Guide to Sustainable Urban Mobility Planning. And as the title says, it's a guide for multimodal city quarters and planning for them, sustainable urban mobility, citizen involvement, mobility points, living streets, and peer review. So essentially everything that we have done in the project is touched upon in this publication. Then we also have the Toolbox for Mobility Management, which targets different stakeholders such as kindergartens, schools, companies, and urban development. And as Michael mentioned, there is still the evaluation report that we will publish within March still. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, the project will end in just a few weeks. So be sure to check out the website, as we have said already many times. All the news and publications are there, and reports, and also the previous webinar recordings and presentations. So be sure to check the website out. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to all our speakers.